When Michael Jordan pulled up to a quiet street in Wilmington, North Carolina, nobody knew he was coming. No camera crew, no press, no announcement. Just a tall man in a plain gray car, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, and an old battered shoebox sitting in the back seat under a gray blanket. He had not been back to this town, really back, the way you go back when something is pulling you, in a very long time. He had 6 NBA championships. He had changed basketball forever. He had built a sneaker empire that the whole world knew by name. He had stood at the top of everything a person could stand at the top of. And yet here he was, driving slowly down the streets where he grew up, pressing his face close to the window the way he used to do as a boy, watching the same water tower, the same oak trees, the same town that made him before the world ever knew his name. He was not here for a charity event. He was not here for a celebration. He was not here to be Michael Jordan. He was here for a woman named Ruth Ann Pickett. She was his first love. They were 13 years old when it happened. That quiet, unnamed kind of love that young people fall into before they have the words for it. They walked to class together. They passed folded notes. They sat near each other at lunch without ever once saying out loud why. And there was one afternoon in a library, their library right here in Wilmington, when their hands touched reaching for the same book at the same moment, and neither one of them pulled away, and Michael felt it like electricity all the way to his shoulder. Then the world came for him, the coaches, the camps, not the future arriving ahead of schedule and moving too fast to look back. They drifted the way young people drift when they are too young to know how to hold on. One day they were walking to class together. The next day there was silence. And by the following October, it was as if nothing had ever happened, except something had happened, and Michael Jordan had never been able to put it down. Because that summer, the summer everything changed, the summer he first left Wilmington for basketball camp, he had written Ruth Ann a letter, 3 pages, handwritten in blue ballpoint ink, in the careful looping handwriting of a 13-year-old boy trying harder than he had ever tried at anything to say something true. He had carried that letter to the mailbox 3 separate times. 3 times he stood there with it in his hands. 3 times he turned around and walked back home. He was 13 and terrified, and the letter said things he did not have the courage to say out loud, so he kept it. He put it in an old Nike shoebox and he moved it from apartment to apartment when he was young and broke. He moved it into his first real house in Chicago. He moved it through 6 championships and 2 marriages and more cities than he could count on one hand. It sat on the top shelf of every closet he ever owned, behind winter coats and forgotten things, quiet and waiting. 40 years. He carried it for 40 years. And now he was here, in Wilmington, with the shoebox in the back seat, driving to the address of a woman named Ruth Ann Pickett, who worked at the public library, who had gray hair now, and a daughter she was proud of, in a small house on Clover Street, with a rose bush along the front path and a wind chime beside the door. He knocked. She opened it. She looked at him and at the box and then back at him. And what happened next? What he took out of that shoebox and placed in her hands. What she did the moment she read it. What she wrote about it the following morning on a small library blog that 17 people read, and how that blog post ended up being shared 11 million times in 72 hours by people all over the world who were crying at their phones. All of that is a story that will stay with you for a very long time. Watch the whole video, because what was inside that shoebox is not what you think it is. And when you find out, well, you will understand why a 61-year-old man with 6 championship rings drove alone to a quiet street in his hometown, with his hands sweating and his chest tight, carrying something that was never really his to keep. Some things belong to the person you were before the world found you. And some things, no matter how long you carry them, always find their way home. The black SUV rolled slowly into Wilmington, North Carolina, like it was trying not to wake anyone up. The windows were tinted so dark that people on the sidewalk could not see inside. But inside, Michael Jordan could see everything. He pressed his face close to the glass the way he used to do as a boy, riding in the back of his mother's old Buick with his knees up and his forehead against the cool window. And he used to watch the town slide by like a movie he knew every frame of. He was doing the same thing now, 47 years later, and the town was still playing the same film. The water tower still had that dent near the top left side. He had always wondered how it got there. He never found out. The oak trees on Fenwick Avenue were even bigger now. So big their roots had cracked the sidewalk into uneven slabs that pushed up like little hills. The old feed store on the corner of 3rd and Market had become a nail salon, but the brick walls were the same dark red he remembered, the same bricks he had once touched on a dare because someone said the building was haunted. It was not haunted. It was just old. Most things he loved were just old. His assistant, Marcus Webb, was sitting in the front passenger seat and typing fast on his phone. Marcus was 34 years old and had worked for Michael for 11 years and was very good at his job, which mostly meant staying calm when things got complicated and asking the right questions at the right time. He was asking one now without looking up from his screen. "You sure you don't want me to call ahead?" "I'm sure," Michael said. "It's just, if someone spots you and posts before we're ready, it becomes a whole..." Marcus stopped talking. The car was quiet except for the sound of tires on Old Road. Michael leaned back and looked at the ceiling of the SUV. He was 61 years old. He had 6 NBA championship rings. He knew exactly where each one was kept and never wore any of them anymore. He had built a sneaker brand that changed the way the whole world bought shoes. His face had been on magazine covers, on billboards in Tokyo and Paris and Sao Paulo, on the bedroom walls of boys who grew up wanting to be him. He had shaken hands with presidents. He had sat at tables with the most powerful people on earth. None of that had prepared him for today. His chest was tight. His hands, resting on his knees, were damp. He felt the way he used to feel before a big game. Not afraid exactly, but alive in a sharp, electric way that made everything feel important. In the trunk of the SUV, under a gray moving blanket, there was a shoebox. It was an old Nike shoebox, the cardboard gone soft at the corners and faded from orange to the color of old paper. Where the tape on the lid had been replaced so many times that you could see the layers if you looked closely. Clear tape over yellowed tape over a strip of masking tape that had dried and curled at the edges. The box itself was not heavy. It weighed almost nothing. But Michael Jordan had been carrying it for 40 years. He had moved it from his first apartment in Chicago, where the heat barely worked and he slept on a mattress on the floor and thought about the future every single night. He had moved it into the first real house he ever bought. He had moved it when he got married, and then again when the marriage ended, and again through every chapter of a life that turned out bigger than anything he had planned for. The box had sat on the top shelf of every closet he had ever owned, and behind winter coats and old shoes and things he never threw away, quiet and waiting. His daughter had found it once. She was 7, standing on a step stool, reaching for something on the shelf above her head. Her fingers found the box and she pulled it toward her. "What's in here, Daddy?" "That's not for you, sweetheart," he said. "Not mean, just final." She put it back. She never asked again. He had not opened it himself in more than 12 years. But he knew exactly what was inside. He could close his eyes and see it perfectly. The color of the paper, the color of the ink, the way the pages were folded. He had written every word himself. He had been 13 years old. The SUV stopped at a red light on the corner of Pine and 5th. On the sidewalk, a boy, maybe 8 years old, small and serious, was bouncing a basketball against the concrete. The ball was too big for his hands. Every few bounces it went sideways and he had to chase it and start again. But he never stopped. He just picked it up and tried once more, each time with the same calm, stubborn focus. Michael watched him until the light turned green. He smiled, a real one, slow and private. He had been that boy once, right here, on streets just like this one, with a ball too big for his hands and a future too big to imagine. He had been a kid in this town who did not know yet what he would become, who only knew the feel of the pavement and the sound of the ball, and the way the summer air smelled like cut grass, and the neighbor's dryer sheets and something sweet he could never quite name. Yet he had been a kid in this town who fell in love for the first time. Her name was Ruth Ann Pickett. She was 12 years old when he first spoke to her. He was 13. It was a Tuesday. He was certain because band practice was on Tuesdays, and she had been walking out of the music room carrying her flute case in both arms when they almost ran into each other in the hallway. She had looked up at him and said, "Excuse me," so politely that he forgot the word for sorry and just stood there like a chair until she walked around him and disappeared around the corner. He thought about her the rest of that day and the day after, and most days that followed for the next 10 months. He had not seen Ruth Ann Pickett since the summer after 8th grade, but she was still in Wilmington. His mother had told him that years back, the way she mentioned things she thought he needed to know but would never ask about. "That sweet Pickett girl is still here," she had said. "Works at the library, keeps to herself. Quiet life." Michael had not asked anything more. He had let the moment pass the way he had let many moments pass. But the words settled in him like stones in still water, heavy and permanent, never quite sinking all the way. Now he was here. He did not know what she would say when she saw him. He did not know if she would be glad or angry or somewhere in between. He did not know if she thought about him at all, or if he was just a chapter from long ago that she had finished and closed. He only knew one thing for certain. In the trunk of this car, under a gray blanket, was something that had belonged to her for 40 years. And it was time, past time, to give it back. Wilmington had changed, and also it had not changed at all. This is the strange thing about the town where you grew up. New paint goes on the buildings, new signs go up in the windows. Whole blocks get torn down and built back up in glass and concrete that feels borrowed from somewhere bigger and colder. But underneath all of it, underneath every new coat of color and every fresh layer of asphalt, the town stays exactly itself. The air smells the same. The light at 4 in the afternoon falls at the same angle it always did. The people walk at the same unhurried pace, like they have decided quietly and without discussion that rushing is for somewhere else. Michael had not been back in a long time. Not really back. He had passed through for events, a charity dinner, a ribbon cutting, once for a funeral that he did not let himself think about too long. But passing through was different from returning. Passing through meant you kept one foot pointed at the exit. Returning meant you let the place have you, at least for a little while. Today he was returning. Marcus had reserved 2 rooms at a place called the Blue Heron Inn on the eastern edge of town, using a name that was not Michael's. The hotel was small and plain. 12 rooms, cream-colored walls, a tiny lobby with a fake plant by the window, and a television mounted too high on the wall. The woman at the front desk was named Odessa. She was somewhere past 70, with silver hair pinned up and reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She checked Michael in without looking up from her keyboard. When she handed him the room key card, her eyes met his for exactly 1 second. Nothing happened in those eyes. No flicker of recognition, no double take. "Ice machine is at the end of the hall," she said. "Breakfast is 7 to 9. We're out of the blueberry muffins, but the banana bread is good." "Thank you," Michael said. Said Odessa, and went back to her keyboard. Michael almost laughed. After he dropped his bag in the room, he told Marcus and the 2-man security team to stay put. He changed into plain dark jeans, a white shirt with no logo, and a baseball cap that he pulled low over his eyes. He looked in the mirror for a moment. He looked like a tall man in a cap. That was enough. He walked out alone. He went down Main Street the way he used to walk it as a boy, hands in his pockets, taking his time. And the pharmacy where he used to buy orange popsicles with the $1.50 he earned from mowing Mr. Dubry's lawn was still there, though it had a new name now and a coffee bar inside and a rack of phone chargers by the door. The movie theater was dark and padlocked. A sign taped to the glass said, "Future home of Riverside Loft Apartments, coming spring 2026. He stood in front of it for a moment. He had seen his first movie in that theater. He could not remember which one. He remembered the popcorn and the cold air and the feeling of being somewhere special. He kept walking. He passed the elementary school. Through the chain-link fence, he could see the playground. The same metal climbing frame, the same 2 swings, the same cracked blacktop painted with a 4-square grid in colors that had faded to ghosts. He had run across that blacktop so many times that the teachers used to make him run laps just to burn off what they called his energy, though what they really meant was his speed. Even then, at 7 and 8 years old, something in his body could not stay slow. A few people on the sidewalk glanced at him. Once, a teenage girl in a green jacket looked up from her phone and her whole face froze, but she did not say anything. She looked back down. He walked on. He found himself, without planning to, on the street where he grew up. The house was still there at the end of the block. It was painted a soft green now, the color of unripe apples, which his mother never would have allowed. Dolores Jordan had strong feelings about house colors. She would have called that green wishy-washy. She would have repainted it before the first coat dried. There was a pickup truck in the driveway that belonged to whoever lived there now, and a welcome mat that said, "Home is where the heart is," in letters that were starting to fray. Michael stood on the sidewalk across the street. He looked at the upstairs window on the right, his old bedroom. The curtains were different. Everything was different, and nothing was. He thought about his father. James Jordan had loved this house the way certain men love the things they built their lives around. Quietly, completely, without needing to say it out loud. He had mowed the lawn on Saturday mornings and fixed the gutters in the fall, and sat on the porch in the evenings with a glass of sweet tea and watched the neighborhood go about its business like it was the finest entertainment in the world. He was gone now, gone in the worst possible way, suddenly and senselessly and too soon, and the grief of it never fully left. It lived in Michael like a room he could not close off, one he walked past every day and sometimes stopped in front of and just stood there, not going in, not walking away. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He had not come here to grieve. He had come here for something else, for someone else. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus. "I need you to find out something for me," he said, "and I need you to do it without asking why." One beat of silence. "And all right. There's a woman named Ruth Ann Pickett. I need to know if she still works at the Wilmington Public Library." He hung up. He stood on the sidewalk in front of the house where he had grown up, and he waited. The wind moved through the oak trees. Somewhere down the block, a screen door opened and closed. The town breathed around him, slow and steady, like it had been waiting for him to come back for a very long time, and was in no hurry now that he finally had. His phone buzzed while he was still standing on the sidewalk in front of the old house. It was Marcus. "She's there," Marcus said. No preamble, no questions, just the two words Michael needed most. "Works Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5. Been there 22 years. She's the head of the children's section." Michael closed his eyes. He stood very still on the cracked sidewalk, with the October wind moving through the oaks above him, and the sound of a lawnmower somewhere 2 streets over, and the smell of someone's fireplace carrying across the neighborhood. He stood still and breathed and let the information settle into him the way water settles into dry ground, slowly finding all the places that had been waiting for it. "Is she?" he started. Then he stopped. "Is she what?" Marcus asked. "Nothing," Michael said. "Thank you." He hung up and put the phone in his pocket. He had not seen Ruth Ann Pickett since the summer after 8th grade. He had been 13 years old, almost 14, close enough that he counted it, and she had been 13, and they had spent the better part of one school year being something that had no official name. Not girlfriend and boyfriend, not exactly, though it felt like that. More like two people who had quietly chosen each other in the way that young people sometimes do, without forms or announcements, just a slow and certain leaning toward. They had walked to class together every morning. They had passed notes on paper folded into tight little squares. He still remembered the way she folded them, with the corners tucked in so neatly it looked almost professional. They had sat near each other at lunch without it ever being discussed or arranged. It simply happened, the way certain things happen when you are young and following something you cannot yet name. There had been one afternoon in the library, their library, the Wilmington Public Library, when their hands had met reaching for the same book on the same shelf at the same moment. Neither of them pulled away. They stood there with their fingers overlapping on the spine of a book about the solar system, and for the space of about 4 seconds, neither one of them breathed. He had felt that in his arm all the way to his shoulder. He had felt it for days afterward. Then summer came, and the phone calls from coaches started, and his body kept changing, growing taller and faster and stronger in ways that felt almost out of his control. And the world outside Wilmington began pulling at him like a river current pulling at someone who is standing in shallow water. At first, the pull is easy to ignore. Then one day you notice your feet are not quite touching the bottom. He had not broken up with Ruth Ann. There was no conversation, no moment, no words said or unsaid on a particular day, and they simply drifted the way two paper boats drift apart when the water moves. No decision, no drama, just distance accumulating until the distance becomes the whole story. He had always meant to do something about that distance. He was 47 years late. He walked to the library. It was 8 blocks from his childhood home. He knew the route without thinking about it. Left on Fenwick, right on Grover, straight down past the Methodist church with the peeling white steeple and across the intersection where there used to be a stop sign and was now a traffic light. The library sat on the corner of 4th and Caldwell, a solid brick building with big glass doors, and on the wall facing the side street, a mural that had not been there when Michael was young. It showed children of every size and color sitting together under a vast, branching oak tree, each one holding a book, each one looking upward at something just out of the frame. He looked at that mural for a moment before he went in. Then he pushed through the glass doors. The smell hit him first. Libraries have a smell that is unlike anything else. Not the smell of books exactly, though that is part of it, but the smell of the particular quiet that lives inside them, the smell of stored time and accumulated words and the breathing of people who have come to think something through. He had not been inside a library in years, and the smell reached something in him that was very old and very young at the same time. He kept his cap low. At the front desk, a young man with round glasses was sorting returned books into piles. He was maybe 20 years old and moving fast, the way people move when they are new to a job and still trying to prove something to themselves. He glanced at Michael, then he glanced away. "Can I help you find something?" "The children's section," Michael said. The young man pointed left without looking up again. "Past the reference shelves, follow the yellow stripe on the floor." Michael followed the yellow stripe. The children's section opened up at the end of a short hallway, and it was a different world from the rest of the building. The ceilings were lower here, the walls painted in blocks of warm color, yellow and soft orange and a blue that reminded him of a summer sky in the early morning before the heat arrived. The shelves were low and rounded at the corners, so small children would not bump their heads. There was a reading rug on the floor with animals on it, a giraffe, 2 elephants, a row of rabbits, worn smooth in the middle from years of small bodies sitting on it. Above the entrance, a hand-painted banner read, "Stories live here," the letters made to look like they had been carved from wood and were growing leaves. A mother was crouched beside a low shelf, holding a picture book open, while her daughter, maybe 4 years old, wearing rain boots with frogs on them, studied the illustrations with full and serious attention. A small boy lay on his stomach on the reading rug, chin in his hands, turning pages slowly, as though each one required careful consideration before he could move to the next. At the far end of the room, near a window that let in a long blade of afternoon light, a woman stood with her back to Michael. She was arranging picture books on a shelf. She did it carefully, the way a person does a thing they love. Each book placed just so, spine out, straight, but not rigid, given its proper space. Her hair was gray and pulled up in a twist at the back of her head. She was wearing a soft blue cardigan and dark slacks and shoes that were sensible and quiet on the floor. She was slender, and she stood with her weight shifted to one foot and her head tilted slightly to the left. Michael stopped walking. He had not seen her in 47 years. He knew her immediately, not from her face, which he could not yet see, from the way she stood, from the tilt of her head, which had always meant she was concentrating, from the unhurried, deliberate care of her hands, and which had always moved that way, like the things they touched mattered and deserved to be treated accordingly. He had been in arenas with 20,000 people on their feet screaming his name. He had hit shots in the final seconds of games that decided championships. He had stood at the center of the world's attention more times than he could count and felt the particular crackling electricity of a moment that everyone would remember. None of it had ever felt like this. His heart was doing something it had not done since he was 13 years old. Something simple and enormous, something with no name that fitted exactly. "Ruth Ann," he said. His voice came out softer than he meant it to, quieter. like something that had been kept in a small box for a long time and was unfolding now into the light. She went still. Then she turned. She turned, and for 1 second, just one, her face was completely still. Not frozen the way faces freeze when something is shocking. Not wide open the way faces go when something is wonderful and unexpected. Just still, the way a pond goes perfectly still in the moment before a stone breaks its surface. That single, held second where everything waits. Then she blinked. "Michael," she said. She did not say it like a question. She did not say it the way people usually said his name, with a rise at the end, with surprise or excitement, or the particular brightness that comes from recognizing someone famous. She said it flat and certain, like a word she had kept ready for a long time and was now finally using. Like she had turned it over in some quiet corner of herself more times than she could count. And saying it out loud was simply the next natural thing. Ruth Ann Pickett was 60 years old. She was beautiful in the way that certain people become beautiful when they spend their lives doing quiet and meaningful work. Not beautiful in spite of the years, but because of them. The lines around her eyes and at the corners of her mouth had been put there by laughter and by difficulty in roughly equal amounts. The way it is for people who have lived honestly, she wore them without apology, with a kind of easy dignity that some people spend their whole lives chasing and never find. She did not reach out to hug him. She did not step back either. She simply looked at him, steady and unhurried, with the same way she used to look at him when they were 13, and he said something he thought was very impressive, and she was deciding whether she agreed. "It's been a while," she said. "It has," he said. Around them, the children's section of the library went on being what it was. Warm and colorful and full of small, serious people doing the important work of choosing their next book. The little girl in the frog rain boots had made her selection and was hugging it to her chest with both arms the way children hug things they have decided to love. The boy on the reading rug had not moved. The world was being completely ordinary in every direction, and Michael Jordan was standing in the middle of it, feeling like the ground had shifted slightly under his feet. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Not here. Somewhere private." She was quiet for a moment. She looked at him the way she always had, carefully, fully, without rushing toward an answer. This was something he had remembered about her, even when he was not trying to. She never answered fast. She thought first, and because of that, when she did speak, every word carried weight. "My break is at noon," she said. "There's a sandwich place 2 blocks north. Dolly's. It's small, it's quiet. Can you find it?" He did not know it. It had not existed when he was 13, but he said yes. "I'll meet you there at noon," she said. Then she turned back to her bookshelf, selected a picture book, and set it carefully in its place. The conversation was over, for now. He stood for one more moment, long enough to understand that she was not going to look back at him, and then he walked out through the yellow stripe on the floor and past the young man at the front desk who was still sorting books, and did not look up, and out through the big glass doors into the cool October air. Dolly's sandwich shop was exactly what its name suggested. Small and honest and completely without pretense. 8 tables, mismatched wooden chairs, a chalkboard menu on the wall behind the counter, and a smell of fresh bread and coffee that hit you the second you opened the door and stayed with you, like a kindness. The walls were covered in black and white photographs of Wilmington across the decades. The old train station, the waterfront in the 1940s, a 4th of July parade from what looked like the 1950s with children sitting on the curb and waving small flags. Michael took a table in the back corner, facing the door, cap still low. A young woman brought him coffee without being asked and went back to the counter. He wrapped his hands around the mug. He was not cold. He just needed something to hold. He found a photograph on the wall nearest his table. The library taken from across the street in what looked like the early 1960s. The building was smaller then, or maybe the trees around it were smaller, and it looked bigger now by comparison. There were children on the front steps. He studied their faces, even though he knew none of them could be Ruth Ann. She had not been born yet when this picture was taken. He was still looking at it when she came in. She arrived at exactly noon. She had let her hair down from the twist so that it fell soft and gray to her shoulders. And she had put on her coat, a dark wool coat with big buttons over the blue cardigan. She moved through the small restaurant without looking around, went to the counter, ordered a cup of chamomile tea and a chicken sandwich in a voice that was clear and comfortable, and then carried both to his table and sat down across from him. Not beside him, across, where she could see him fully. He noticed this. "How long are you in town?" she asked. She unwrapped her sandwich and set the paper aside neatly. "As long as I need to be," he said. She wrapped both hands around her tea and looked at him across the rim of the cup. Her eyes were the same deep brown he remembered. Nothing about them had changed at all. "That's an interesting way to put it." "I have something for you," he said. "Something I've been carrying for a long time. On something that belongs to you." She raised her eyebrows just slightly, a question without words. "That also sounds interesting," she said. He opened his mouth and then closed it again. He was a man who had given 10,000 interviews. He had spoken in front of crowds that filled entire arenas. He had stood at podiums and said the right things at the right moments with a precision that looked effortless because he had worked so hard to make it that way. He was not a man who ran out of words, and yet he had no idea how to begin. "I never said goodbye to you," he said finally. "When I left Wilmington, I didn't know how to say the things I was feeling. I was young and I don't know what I thought. That there would be time, that the right moment would come. And then the moments kept passing, and the gap between us kept getting wider, and eventually the gap was so wide I couldn't see across it anymore." She was quiet. She picked up her sandwich and took one small, considered bite and set it back down. She chewed slowly and kept her eyes on him. "Michael," she said, "that was 47 years ago." "I know. We were children. I know that. So why are you here now? After 47 years, why today?" He exhaled slowly. "Because I've been carrying something that belongs to you for 40 years, and it's time I gave it back." "Past time," he paused. "And because I think you deserve to know what's in it." She held his gaze for a long moment. The coffee machine behind the counter let out a long hiss. Someone at another table laughed at something. When the world went on not knowing or caring what was happening at this small wooden table in the back corner of Dolly's sandwich shop. Then Ruth Ann set down her tea. "All right," she said, quietly, carefully, the word landing like a door opening. "Come to my house tonight, 44 Clover Street, 7 o'clock. She stood, tucked 2 folded bills under the edge of her cup, picked up her tea and walked out. She did not look back. Michael sat alone at the table and did not drink his coffee. He sat for 10 full minutes looking at the photograph of the library on the wall. He sat until the warmth left the mug and the lunch crowd started to fill the other tables, and the young woman behind the counter glanced at him with the polite impatience of someone who needed the table back. He left. He walked back to the hotel with his hands in his pockets and the October wind against his face, and one thought moving through him steadily, like a drum beat, like a countdown. 7 o'clock, Clover Street. 44. Back at the Blue Heron Inn, Michael called Marcus from the parking lot before he even went inside. "Bring me the box," he said. There was a pause, not a long one. "The one from your room?" "Yes. I'll bring it right up." Marcus did not ask which box. He knew which box. In 11 years of working for Michael Jordan, Marcus Webb had moved that shoebox from car to hotel room and back again more times than he could count. He had never once been told what was inside it. He had never once asked. This was one of the things that made Marcus very good at his job. He brought the box to the room, he set it on the bed without a word, and left. Michael stood in the doorway and looked at it from across the room. It was an old Nike shoebox. The cardboard had faded from its original orange to something closer to the color of old newspaper. Pale and thin at the edges, soft at the corners from 4 decades of being picked up and put down and moved from place to place. The swoosh on the side was barely visible now, a ghost of the logo it had once been. The tape on the lid had been replaced so many times that it had built up in layers, each one a different color and texture. Shiny tape over matte tape over a strip of old masking tape gone yellow and brittle at the edges. If you look closely at those layers, they told a kind of history. Each one was a year, a place, a version of Michael that no one got to see. He sat on the edge of the bed. He had not opened this box since 2012. He knew the year precisely because the last time he had opened it was the night before what would have been his father's birthday. He could not remember which one, because after his father died, the birthdays became a different kind of day entirely. A day for sitting quietly and being inside, a feeling too large for any room. He had opened the box that night and taken out what was inside and read it by the light of a lamp on the floor of his North Carolina house. Then he had folded it back up and put it in the box and pressed the lid down and taped it shut and put it back on the shelf. And he had sat there on the floor for a long time in the lamplight, doing nothing at all. Now he peeled the tape off slowly. It came away in pieces, each strip dry and reluctant. Why, the way old tape comes away when it has been holding on for too long. He lifted the lid. Inside, on a small square of folded tissue paper that had gone thin as a moth's wing with age, lay 3 pages of notebook paper. The paper had yellowed. Not badly. Not falling apart yellow, not crumbling at the edges yellow, but the soft, even yellow of something that has been kept carefully in the dark for a very long time. The lines of the notebook paper were still faintly visible, blue-green and regular, running across each page like the staff lines of a piece of music waiting to be played. The handwriting was his. He could still see the 13-year-old in it. The way the letters leaned slightly to the right, the way certain words were written more carefully than others, as though he had slowed down when the thought felt important. The way his name at the bottom was signed, not in the sharp, fast slash it would later become, but in a careful, rounded signature that was still deciding what shape it wanted to take. The ink had faded in places, blue ballpoint, gone soft and gray in the creases where the pages had been folded. But he could still read every word. He did not need to read them. He had read them enough times in enough dark, quiet rooms over the years that he carried them inside him the way you carry the words of a song you learned as a child. Not something you try to remember, just something that is there. The letter began. Dear Ruth Ann, I know you probably think I forgot about you. I didn't. I could never forget about you. He did not read further. He pressed the lid back onto the box and set it gently on the nightstand beside the lamp. He had written that letter the summer he turned 14, the summer he first left Wilmington for basketball camp. The first summer the world outside this town felt real and close and pulling at him. He had written it in one sitting at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning when his mother was at work and the house was quiet. It had taken him almost 2 hours. He had thrown away 2 drafts before this one. He had carried it to the mailbox on 3 separate occasions. The first time, he got all the way to the end of the driveway and stopped. He stood at the mailbox with the envelope in his hand and thought about her reading it. Thought about her face going through whatever it would go through, and he could not lift the little door. He walked back inside. The second time, he made it all the way to the mailbox at the end of the street. The big blue public mailbox on the corner of Fenwick and Grover. The one with the sticker on the side that someone had put there years ago and nobody had ever bothered to remove. He stood with his hand on the handle and his heart going hard in his chest. Then a car passed and honked at something that had nothing to do with him, and the sound broke the moment and he walked back. The third time he stood at that same corner for 11 minutes. He counted. He stood with the letter in both hands and the August heat pressing down on him and the sounds of the neighborhood all around. Sprinklers, a radio, or someone calling a child in for dinner. And he thought about everything he was trying to say and everything he was afraid of hearing back. And then he put the letter in his pocket and went home and did not try again. He was 13 years old and terrified, and the letter said things he did not know how to say out loud. So he kept it. The years came the way years do, fast at first and then faster. He went back to school in September, and Ruth Ann was there, and they were polite to each other in the careful, cautious way of 2 people who once shared something and do not know how to be in the same room as the memory of it. By October, the silence between them was ordinary. By November, it was old. Then the next summer came, and the coaches came with it, and the offers, usher in the future arriving ahead of schedule like a train that had not waited for him to be ready. He went to the University of North Carolina. He won a national championship. He stood on a podium in Los Angeles with an Olympic gold medal around his neck and tried to understand what his life had become. He was drafted by the Chicago Bulls. He moved to a city that did not sleep and became a name that meant something to the whole world. The letter went everywhere he went. In interviews over the years, reporters asked him about regrets. He always said he had none. This was mostly true. He was not a man who looked backward. Looking backward cost you speed, and speed was everything. He believed in moving forward, always forward, and in winning the next thing as completely as he had won the last. But the letter was the one place where forward had never felt like enough. Not because he wished his life had gone differently. He did not. His life had been enormous and difficult and full of things that broke him and things that rebuilt him, and he would not have traded 1 year of it. But there was a difference between wanting a different life and wishing one person had known one true thing about you before you became too big for the truth to travel easily. Ruth Ann Pickett had been the first person outside his own blood who made him want to be good. Not better at basketball. Good. As a person. As a human being taking up space in the world. When you are 13 and someone does that for you, without knowing they are doing it, without asking for anything back, without even understanding the size of what they have given you, it becomes part of the foundation of who you are. You build on top of it for the rest of your life. She deserved to know that she was part of the foundation. Michael looked at the shoebox on the nightstand. The lamplight caught the edge of the lid and made a thin line of gold along the tape. At 7 o'clock, he was going to 44 Clover Street. He was going to hand Ruth Ann Pickett a letter he had written for her 40 years ago and never sent. He was 61 years old. His hands were still sweating. At 5 o'clock, Marcus knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks. Not demanding, not timid, just present. The way Marcus always knocked, as if he understood that his job was to be available without being intrusive, which was a harder thing to do than most people gave it credit for. "Everything okay in there?" he asked. Michael opened the door. He was dressed already. Dark jeans, a plain charcoal button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, no chain around his neck, no rings on his fingers. The only thing he wore that had any meaning was the watch on his left wrist. It was not flashy. It was a simple thing with a worn leather band, and it had belonged to his mother. She had given it to him the year before she passed, sitting at her kitchen table with the morning light coming in through the window and her hands folded around her coffee cup, and she had pushed it across the table to him without a big speech because she was not a woman who needed big speeches to make a moment land. He had worn it on and off ever since. He was wearing it now because tonight felt like a night that called for it. "Fine," he said. Marcus looked at him. Then he looked past him at the room service tray on the small desk by the window, the covered plate, the folded napkin, the glass of water that had not been touched. He had ordered it 2 hours ago and not eaten a bite. "You haven't eaten," Marcus said. "I'll eat later." "It's 5 o'clock. Marcus." Marcus stopped. There was a brief silence during which Marcus looked at the shoebox sitting on the nightstand beside the lamp and made no comment about it whatsoever. This took some discipline. The box had been sitting there in full view since he had brought it up that afternoon, and it was clearly significant in a way that everything about this whole unexplained trip to Wilmington was significant. And Marcus had approximately 40 questions he was not going to ask. "Security team is ready when you need them," he said instead. "No security tonight," Michael said. Marcus inhaled slowly. "Michael? No security? You're in a public town, and people have cameras on their phones, and you are possibly the most recognizable human being on the planet. If someone spots you..." "Marcus," the name came out flat and final, the way it always did when the conversation was over. Marcus had learned to recognize that tone the way you learn to recognize weather. It meant the decision had already been made, and the discussion was a formality that was no longer necessary. He exhaled. "Where will you be?" 44 Clover Street. I'll have my phone. Text me if you need to feel better about things." But I'm going alone." Michael picked up the shoebox from the nightstand and held it at his side. "I'm just a man visiting an old friend." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "You're not just a man," he said quietly. "You are Michael Jordan. There's a difference." "Not tonight," Michael said. "Tonight there isn't." Marcus nodded once, slowly, in the way of someone who disagrees but respects the decision anyway. Then he turned and went back down the hall. Michael stood in the doorway and listened to his footsteps go quiet. Then he looked down at the box in his hands. He turned it over slowly, the way you turn something over when you are saying goodbye to it. It was lighter than it should have been for something that had lived with him for 40 years. That was the strange thing about letters. They weighed almost nothing. A few sheets of paper, some dried ink, 40 years of meaning, and you could hold the whole of it in one hand. But the weight of carrying it, the weight that had no measurement, the weight of all the times he had almost sent it and hadn't, of all the years it had sat in the dark on the top shelf of every closet he had ever owned, that was a different kind of weight entirely. That kind did not show up on any scale ever built. He took the plain gray sedan from the hotel parking lot and drove himself. Clover Street was 3 miles from the Blue Heron Inn, through the older part of town where the streets were narrow and the houses sat close to the road, and the trees had been there long enough to make the sidewalks uneven. He drove slowly and found number 44 near the middle of the block and pulled to the curb and cut the engine. And he sat for a moment. The house was small and white, with blue shutters the color of clear sky in the late afternoon. A wooden porch stretched across the front with 2 chairs on it, mismatched, both worn smooth, both angled slightly toward each other the way chairs get angled when someone sits in them regularly and always faces the same direction. On the small table between the chairs sat a clay pot with something dried in it that had once been flowers. Along the front path, a rose bush had been cut all the way back for winter. Just bare brown stems and thorns now, stripped of everything soft. But it was planted straight and tended carefully, and it would come back in spring the same way it always had. A wind chime hung beside the front door, small, made of thin pieces of driftwood and smooth river stones, not clicking and settling softly in the evening air. There was a warm light burning in the front window. Michael looked at that light for a moment. Then he got out of the car. He carried the shoebox up the front path. The porch steps were solid under his feet. The wind chime moved. The night smelled of wood smoke from somewhere nearby. That particular autumn smell that belongs to no one place and every place at once. The smell of the season turning towards something quieter. He stood at the door. He raised his hand. He had stood at the mailbox on Fenwick and Grover 3 times with this same letter in his hands and walked away each time. He was not walking away tonight. He was 61 years old and his chest was tight and his hands were damp, and none of that mattered anymore. He knocked. When the door opened quickly enough to tell him she had been near it. Waiting maybe, or simply ready, which was the same thing. She had changed out of her work clothes. She was wearing a rust-colored sweater, soft and loose, and dark slacks, and her feet were in socks. Her reading glasses were pushed up onto her head. She held a mug in both hands, something warm that sent a thin curl of steam into the cool air between them. She looked at him. She looked at the box. She looked back at him. "You came," she said. "I said I would," he said. She held his gaze for one still moment. Then she stepped back from the door and opened it wider, all the way. "Come in, Michael," she said. He stepped across the threshold. The door closed softly behind him. Her home was full of books. Not in the way a library is full of books. Not ordered by subject, not labeled on the spine, not arranged for the comfort of strangers. In the way a person fills a home when reading is not a hobby, but a way of being alive. Shelves in the front room that went floor to ceiling and were so packed that some books had been laid flat on top of the upright ones to make room. A stack on the end table beside the sofa. 5 books, 6, leaning against each other like old friends at a bus stop. More on the windowsill. A paperback open and face down on the arm of the chair, saving its place for when she came back to it. And on the coffee table, a library book with a paper bookmark sticking out near the middle and a small yellow sticky note on the cover that said, "Check this one." Nadia with an arrow pointing at the author's name. Every book had been touched. Every spine had been cracked or carefully not cracked, depending on the book. Some had pencil marks in the margins, small, precise notations in handwriting he recognized even after all these years as hers. Michael stood just inside the closed front door and took it all in. He had been inside many rooms in his life. Rooms in the White House. Rooms at the top of hotels where the windows went from floor to ceiling and the whole city spread out below, like something that existed purely for looking at. locker rooms that smelled of sweat and adrenaline, and the particular pressure of a game not yet played. Boardrooms where the people sitting around the table were worth more money than entire countries. He had never stood in a room that felt more completely like a person. At every corner of this room was Ruth Ann. Her curiosity, her patience, her love of things that required slowing down. The books, the photographs arranged carefully on the shelves between them. Her daughter Nadia, at what looked like every age from newborn to grown woman, an older couple on a porch swing that had to be her parents. A younger woman who shared Ruth Ann's jaw and her way of standing, who must have been a sister. There were no pictures of a husband, though there were a few photographs that had the particular quality of pictures from which someone has not been removed, but simply has not appeared in for a while. The kind you keep because the moment was real and the moment still belongs to you, even when the person no longer does. "Sit down," Ruth Ann said from the small kitchen doorway. "Sweet tea?" "Please," he said, though he had not asked for it. He sat on the sofa. The cushions were soft and slightly compressed on one end, the end nearest the lamp and the stack of books on the side table. Her end, the place where she sat every evening. He chose the other end and set the shoebox beside him on the cushion. She came back with 2 glasses. She handed him one and took her chair. The chair across from the sofa, not beside him on the sofa. The same instinct she had shown at Dolly's. She needed to be able to see him. He understood this. He needed the same thing. They each took a sip. "Your daughter," Michael said, nodding toward the photographs. "Nadia." "Nadia," she repeated. The name came out shaped by love, the way certain words get shaped when you say them 10,000 times and mean it every time. "She's 34. Lives in Durham with her partner, Kwame. She's a pediatric nurse, works with very sick children." Ruth Ann paused. "She is the bravest person I know." Michael looked at the photograph of Nadia, laughing at something off camera, her mother's cheekbones, her eyes bright and uncomplicated. "You did that," he said. Ruth Ann looked at him. "Did what?" "Made someone like that. That doesn't happen by accident." Ruth Ann was quiet for a moment, in the way of someone receiving a compliment they were not prepared for, and needed a second to decide what to do with. Then she set her glass on the table and folded her hands. "I was married," she said. "Raymond Okonkwo. We met at a conference in Atlanta. I was there for a library sciences seminar, and he was there for something else entirely, and we ended up at the same table at dinner and talked for 4 hours." She smiled at the memory, briefly and without sadness. "We were together for 20 years. He passed from pancreatic cancer in 2018. "I'm sorry," Michael said. He said it simply, without flourish, the way he said things when he meant them completely. "Thank you." She looked at her hands. He was a good man, a very good man. Nadia adored him. She lifted her eyes back to Michael. "I heard about your father, years ago now. It was all over the news, of course, but I remember where I was when I heard it. I was in this house, in that chair." She nodded toward the one she was sitting in now. "All right, so I sat right there and I thought about you." Michael's jaw tightened the way it always did when his father came into a conversation. Not from anger, from the particular effort of holding something very heavy, very still. "I wanted to write to you," Ruth Ann said. "I sat down with a pen and paper. I still write letters by hand, I always have. And I started 3 different times. But each time I got a few lines in and I stopped." She paused. "I didn't know if it was my place anymore. Too much time had passed. I didn't know if a letter from a girl you barely remembered from 8th grade would be welcome or just strange." The words landed carefully in the room. "I remember you," Michael said. His voice was level and certain. "I never barely remembered you." She held his gaze for a moment. Something shifted in her face. Not quite surprise, not quite relief. Something between them that did not have a clean name. "Too much time can pass," Michael said. "I know that better than anyone." "So why isn't it too much time now?" she asked. "That's the question I keep turning over. Why now, Michael? After 47 years, why drive to Wilmington on a Tuesday in October and walk into my library?" He looked at her. He reached down beside him and picked up the shoebox. He held it in both hands for a moment. That familiar, almost nothing weight, and then he set it slowly on his knees. Ruth Ann's eyes went to the box. Something moved across her face. Not recognition of the object itself. She had never seen it before. But recognition of what it represented. Hawaii, the same thing anyone feels when someone holds something out to them with two careful hands and a look that says, "This has been waiting for you for a very long time." "Before I show you what's in there," Michael said, "I want to tell you something. I want to tell you what you were to me, what you still are, in the way that the first real things stay with you." The room was completely quiet. Outside, the wind chime on the porch clicked once and went still. Ruth Ann folded her hands in her lap. She did not look away from him. "Then tell me," she said. He had not planned to tell her the whole story before he showed her the box. He had spent the better part of the afternoon at the Blue Heron Inn, thinking about how this moment would go, how he would sit down, how he would say a few words by way of introduction, how he would hold the box out to her and let the thing speak for itself. He was a man who believed in preparation. He had watched more hours of game tape than most people watch television in a lifetime. He had stood at the free throw line in empty arenas at midnight, alone, shooting until his arms stopped working, because he believed that the prepared man never had to depend on luck. He had prepared for every important moment of his career with the same cold, complete seriousness. He had not prepared for this one well enough. Because the thing about real conversations, the kind that matter, the kind that change something, is that they do not follow outlines. They follow the shape of what is true. And the truth, once you open the door to it, even a crack, has a way of widening the door entirely. So he told her. When he told her about the summer he wrote the letter, the summer he was 13, and everything was changing so fast he felt like a person trying to hold water in open hands. He told her about sitting at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning with the house empty and quiet around him and writing for almost 2 hours, throwing away 2 drafts before the words finally came out right, or right enough. He told her about folding the pages carefully, sliding them into an envelope, writing her name on the front in his best handwriting, which was not very good even then. He told her about the mailbox all 3 times, the end of the driveway, the corner of Fenwick and Grover, the 11 minutes he stood there counting, and that's with the August heat on his shoulders and the neighborhood going on around him and the letter in both hands and everything he wanted to say, sitting inside it like something alive, pressing against the envelope, trying to get out, and then walking home. Every time walking home. She listened to all of it without interrupting. This was something he had been remembering about her for 47 years without realizing it. The quality of her listening. She listened the way serious readers read, with her whole body still and her whole attention given, taking everything in and letting it settle to its proper depth before she made any judgment about it. When he finished, the room held the silence for a moment, the way a cupped hand holds water. "All these years," she said, not a question, a reckoning. "All these years," he said. She looked at the shoebox resting on his knees. Her expression was careful and unreadable, in the way of someone processing something too large and too layered to react to simply. "You won 6 championships," she said. "I did. You changed the entire sport. You changed what it means to be an athlete. You changed how shoes get sold, how kids dream, how the world understands what one human body is capable of." She paused. Her eyes came back up to his. "And the whole time, on the top shelf of your closet, there was a shoebox with a letter in it, addressed to a librarian in Wilmington, North Carolina." "There was," he said. She let out a long, slow breath through her nose. "That is possibly the strangest and most human thing I have ever heard in my life." Something loosened slightly in his chest. "I thought about sending it," he said, "more times than I can count. But I always talked myself out of it. I thought, she doesn't need this. She's got her life. She doesn't need some famous man showing up in her past with his old feelings like that's something she asked for." "And now?" He looked at her steadily. "Now I'm 61 years old. My father's gone. My mother's gone. And time is moving in a way it didn't used to. Faster, like it knows something I don't. And I got tired." He paused. "I got tired of carrying something that belonged to someone else." He lifted the box from his knees and held it out toward her. She did not take it immediately. She looked at it sitting in his extended hands. That old soft-cornered, and I'll multiply taped box. The way you look at a door that has been closed so long, you have almost forgotten what might be on the other side of it. Not afraid exactly, but careful. Giving yourself one last moment to stand in the before, because the after will be permanent. "Can I ask you something first?" she said. "Anything." Her eyes rose from the box to his face. "Why did you really come back? Not the letter. I believe you about the letter. But something made you get in a car and drive to Wilmington on a Tuesday in October after 47 years. What was it?" Michael lowered the box back to his knees. He was quiet for a moment, not collecting himself. He was already collected, just finding the exact right place to begin. "Last year," he said, "I went back to the United Center in Chicago. Charity event. They played footage from the championship years on the big screen. The old games, the old crowds, the old me. 27 years old, 28, at the absolute peak of everything." He stopped. "I sat there and watched it, and I couldn't feel it anymore. The footage was all there. The sound was all there. But it was like watching a stranger through glass. It felt completely disconnected from anything real." He looked down at the box in his hands. "And then on the drive back to the hotel, I passed an elementary school. There was a kid alone in the parking lot in the dark bouncing a basketball. Terrible form. Completely serious about it. Just him and the ball and the concrete and nobody watching." He paused. "And I felt everything. All at once. Clear as cold water." He looked up at her. So something was telling me something." "What was it telling you?" Ruth Ann asked. Her voice was quiet, fully present, the way it always was when the thing being said mattered. "That the things on the scoreboard aren't the things that last," he said. "The things that last are the ones that made you who you are before any scoreboards existed, before anyone was watching, before any of it." He held the box out again. This time she reached out with both hands and took it. She held it in her lap. The wind chime moved on the porch outside, one soft sound, and then went still again. The warm light held them both. She held the box on her lap the way Michael had held it for 40 years, with both hands, with the particular care of someone who understands without being told that the thing in front of them is not an ordinary object, that it has been somewhere, that it has traveled a long distance to arrive here, and the distance was not measured in miles. She did not rush. She looked at the box for a moment, at the layered tape, at the soft corners, at the faded orange of the old cardboard. The way a person looks at a letter before they open it, when they are still in the last second of not yet knowing what it says. Then she set it flat on her knees and began peeling the tape back. She did it slowly and carefully, pulling each strip away from the cardboard without tearing it, setting the pieces aside on the arm of her chair. Michael watched her hands. He had always watched her hands. They moved now exactly the way they moved when she arranged books on a shelf at the library. With patience, with intention, as if the object being handled had its own dignity and deserved to be treated accordingly. She lifted the lid. She looked inside. She was very still for a long moment, longer than he expected, long enough that he became aware of every small sound in the room. The tick of something in the kitchen, the faint movement of the wind chime on the porch, one soft knock of driftwood against stone, the sound of his own breathing, which he was trying to keep even and steady and not entirely managing. Then slowly, she reached into the box. She lifted out the 3 pages of notebook paper. They were folded in thirds the way a letter gets folded to fit an envelope, and they had been folded and unfolded enough times over the decades that the creases were deep and soft, worn into the paper like the lines in a map that has been opened and refolded 1,000 times. The paper had yellowed to the color of old ivory. She could see, even before she unfolded it, the ghost of handwriting showing through from the other side. Young, looping letters in ink gone faint and gray with time. She unfolded the pages one fold at a time, carefully, the way you open something that you sense has been waiting a very long time and deserves not to be rushed now that the wait is over. She smoothed them flat against her knee. She read. Michael did not watch her face. He looked at the bookshelf near the window. The books arranged in that particular way of hers, some upright, some laid flat on top when the shelf ran out of room, all of them clearly and repeatedly read. He looked at the photograph of Nadia on the shelf between two thick paperbacks. Nadia laughing at something that would never be known, frozen happy in a moment from years ago. He looked at his own hands resting on his knees, which were the hands of a 61-year-old man, lined and large, the knuckles slightly swollen from decades of basketball, from all those miles and all those games and all those years. He was aware of every second passing. He heard the faint sound of her breathing, slow and even as she read. He heard the wind chime once. He heard nothing else. It took her just under 4 minutes to read 3 pages. He did not time it. He simply felt every moment of it. The way you feel time when something important is happening and the usual rushing forward of the world has slowed to let the moment be fully itself. When she finished, she held the pages flat in her lap and looked at the window. Outside the window was the dark street, the bare rose bush along the path, the neighbor's porch light throwing a small yellow circle onto the sidewalk. She looked at all of it without seeing any of it. Michael waited. The letter, written in the leaning, careful handwriting of a 13-year-old boy who was trying harder than he had ever tried at anything that did not involve a basketball, said things he had never said out loud to another human being. It said that she was the sharpest and most interesting person he had ever known, and that being around her made him feel like his own mind was more interesting than he had thought it was. It said that he knew he was not very good at saying the things he meant, and he was sorry for that. And he was trying to get better. It said that the world was starting to feel very large and very fast, and that talking to her was the one thing that made it feel a size he could manage. It said that wherever he ended up, and even at 13 he seemed to understand, dimly and without words, that he was going to end up somewhere. He hoped she knew that she had mattered to who he was becoming, and it ended with, I hope you read a book today that changes something for you. You change things for everyone around you without even knowing it. I hope somebody tells you that someday. Michael. She sat very still. The room held its breath. Then slowly, with both hands, she lifted the 3 pages from her lap and pressed them gently against her chest. Not dramatically, not with any performance in it, or in the way a person does when words are too large to be held anywhere except the closest possible place to the heart. Michael felt something release inside him. It happened the way the end of a long-held breath happens. Not with drama, not with noise, just a slow and complete letting go of something that had been held for a very long time. A tightness he had lived with for so long that he had stopped feeling it as tightness and had simply accepted it as part of the shape of things. Gone. Simply and completely gone. Like setting down a bag you forgot you were carrying. He breathed. Ruth Ann lowered the letter from her chest. She looked at him across the small warm room, and her eyes were bright. Lit from somewhere deep behind them, not with tears but with something older and quieter than tears. She was not crying, and this was something Michael registered with a kind of deep, wordless respect. Ruth Ann Pickett had buried a husband she had loved for 20 years. She had raised a daughter alone, pressed books into small hands for 22 years, watched generation after generation of children walk out of the library, carrying something they had not arrived with. She was not a woman who came apart easily. Her feeling lived in her eyes and in the stillness of her jaw and in the measured evenness of her breathing, and it was more powerful for being contained. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You were a very thoughtful 13-year-old boy." "I had good material to work with," he said. She looked down at the pages in her lap. She ran the tip of one finger slowly along a line of faded ink. Not reading it, just touching it. "Wow, the way you touch something you are still deciding how to hold." "Your handwriting was absolutely terrible," she said. It surprised a laugh out of him. A real one, full and sudden, the kind that had not come up in 2 solid days. "It still is," he said. "I remember you," she said softly. She was not speaking entirely to him. She was speaking a little to the letter, and a little to the Tuesday, 47 years ago, in a school hallway, when a tall, nervous boy had nearly walked into her flute case and then stood there with his mouth open, unable to locate the word. "Sorry." "I remember you in the library, holding books upside down and staring at them like they might start making sense if you looked long enough." He laughed again, quieter this time. "I was nervous," he said. "I know," she said. "No, I thought it was the most endearing thing I had ever seen. She folded the pages back along their original creases, each fold placed where it had lived for 40 years, and set the letter gently on the cushion beside her, as though giving it its own place to rest. Then she looked at him directly. I liked you too, Michael. I liked you very much. I just didn't have the words for it either. The room held that. 47 years of something that had lived in two separate silences, in a shoebox on a closet shelf, and in the quiet of a librarian who once started 3 different letters and never finished one. Spoken aloud at last, and landing softly and completely in the space between them. I'm glad you came back, she said. I'm glad you opened the door, he said. She looked at him steadily. Yes, what happens now? I don't know exactly, he said, but I know I didn't need it to be anything in particular. I just needed you to have the letter. I needed you to know what you were to me, what you are. She held his gaze for one long, quiet moment. Then she smiled, the full smile, the one that used every part of her face and held nothing back. The one he had first seen in a school hallway outside the music room when he was 13 years old and which had lived somewhere inside him, without his permission or his understanding, every day since. Will you stay for dinner? She said. I made soup. Nothing fancy. I would like that very much, he said. Good, she said simply. She stood, and she carried the letter with her into the kitchen, close in both hands, like something she had already decided she was going to keep. Here is what actually broke the internet. It was not what anyone expected. It was not a photograph of Michael Jordan. It was not a video, a statement, or a press release. It was not even something that Michael Jordan did at all. It started, the way most things start that end up everywhere, with a neighbor on a porch. Her name was Gloria Tate. She was 63 years old, recently retired from 28 years of teaching 3rd grade at Hooper Elementary, and she spent most of her evenings in the wooden rocking chair on her front porch with a cup of decaf and whatever library book she was working through. Her porch faced the street. It had a clear, unobstructed view of the front path at number 44, where Ruth Ann Pickett had lived for 19 years and where Gloria had been a neighbor and eventually a friend. Gloria had seen the gray sedan pull up at 10 minutes past 7. She had not thought much of it at first. People parked on Clover Street all the time. But when the driver got out and stood up to his full height in the yellow glow of the nearest street lamp, and then turned and walked up Ruth Ann's front path carrying something under his arm, Gloria narrowed her eyes through her reading glasses and sat up very straight in her rocking chair. She said out loud to no one, "That cannot be who I think that is." She put down her book. She picked up her phone. She did not take a photograph and she did not take a video because Gloria Tate was not that kind of neighbor and never had been. Instead, she opened her messages and found her daughter Tamika, who lived 3 blocks over on Sycamore, who had been Ruth Ann's closest friend for 11 years. She typed, "I think Michael Jordan just walked into Ruth Ann's house carrying a shoebox." 3 minutes passed. Tamika wrote back, "Mom, go to bed." Gloria wrote back, "I am not joking, Tamika. I am looking at his car right now. Gray sedan, North Carolina plates. He is very tall." Her phone rang. It was Tamika. "Mom, are you absolutely certain? I am 63 years old and I spent 28 years reading the fine print on permission slips and I have perfect distance vision," Gloria said. "He was wearing a cap, but the porch light came on when he knocked and I saw his face clear as day. That is Michael Jordan. He walked into Ruth Ann's house with a shoebox under his arm and the door is still closed." There was a long silence on the line. "Anna, I'm coming over," Tamika said. "Don't you knock on that door," Gloria said. "I'm not going to knock on the door," Tamika said, and hung up. Inside number 44, Michael was sitting on a bar stool at the kitchen counter with his cap off and his sleeves still rolled to the elbows, watching Ruth Ann move around her small kitchen with the easy confidence of a person who knows exactly where everything is and has always known. She had set a pot of soup on the stove before he arrived. A simple vegetable soup that she made every week, she told him, because she liked having something warm ready without having to think about it. It smelled of thyme and onion and something deeper underneath. He had taken his phone off the counter and set it face down on the stool beside him so it would stop buzzing. Marcus had been texting every hour, as instructed. Michael had been ignoring him, which was not as instructed, but felt right. They talk to the way people talk when the hard thing has already been said, and what is left is everything else. Easier and warmer and better. The way the air feels after a long rain. She told him about Nadia's partner Kwame, who was a school teacher and made Nadia laugh the way Raymond used to make Ruth Ann laugh, which was good enough for her. He told her about the book he had been reading, a long one, about a Japanese craftsman who spent 40 years perfecting a single thing. And she had read it too, and they argued gently and with pleasure about what the book was actually about. He said it was about patience. She said it was about love. They were both right. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, saw Tamika's name, and placed it face down beside the stove without answering. "You can get that," he said. "I know," she said. She did not get it. Tamika, meanwhile, had parked 2 houses down from number 44 and was sitting in her car with the engine off, texting Gloria. Gloria confirmed the car was still there. The lights were still on inside. She had seen no movement at the door. Tamika sat in the dark for 22 minutes. She was not a rude person. She was not going to walk up and knock on Ruth Ann's door. But she was also not a person who could simply drive away from the information that Michael Jordan was inside her best friend's house on a Tuesday night in October with a shoebox, and that Ruth Ann was not answering her phone. She opened her social media app. She was not thinking about what would happen next. She was just a woman sitting in a parked car with feelings too large to hold quietly. She typed, "Something beautiful is happening on my best friend's street right now. That's all I'm going to say. Sometimes the universe gives people the things they should have always had. Hashtag Wilmington." She did not use anyone's name. She did not tag a location. She did not post a photograph. She put her phone in her cup holder and stared out the windshield at the warm light in Ruth Ann's front window. What happened next was the internet being itself. The post landed in a local Facebook group called Wilmington Neighbors. 41,000 members, a lively and curious community. Within 40 minutes, someone in the group had connected the dots. 3 separate people who had driven down Clover Street that evening had mentioned an unfamiliar gray sedan parked in front of a house. One had noted a very tall man going up the path. A retired police officer in the group ran the partial plate description someone had posted and narrowed it to a rental car agency. Someone else, sharper than the rest, put the rental car together with the tall man, together with Tamika's post, and typed one single sentence into the group thread. "Is Michael Jordan in Wilmington?" By 9:30, it was the top post in the group. By 10, it was spreading beyond the group, moving the way fire moves in dry grass. Not in one direction, but in every direction at once. Unstoppable, and not always careful about what it touched. By midnight, "Michael Jordan is in Wilmington visiting someone" was trending across 3 states. By 2 in the morning, a photograph surfaced. Not of Michael, not of Ruth Ann, not of the house on Clover Street. Someone, to this day it was never determined who, had apparently walked past the gray sedan earlier that evening and taken a photo of something sitting on the back seat, visible through the window before Michael had taken it inside. The photo showed the corner of an old orange shoebox, just the corner. The faded Nike swoosh barely visible, a strip of layered tape on the lid. That was all. That photograph was shared 400,000 times before sunrise. Not Michael Jordan, the shoebox. At 6:14 in the morning, Michael's phone rang. He was awake already, sitting in the chair by the window at the Blue Heron Inn with his coffee, watching the early light come into Wilmington. It was Deb Coulter. He answered on the second ring. "Morning, Deb." "Do not morning, Deb me." Her voice was the voice of a woman who had been awake for 2 hours managing a situation. "There are reporters outside a house on Clover Street. There are 700 messages in my inbox. There is a photograph of a shoebox, just the shoebox, Michael, a corner of a shoebox, that has been shared close to 500,000 times and is currently the top image on 4 separate social media platforms. Please tell me you know what is happening." "I know what is happening," he said. "What was in the shoebox?" He was quiet for a moment. He thought about the way Ruth Ann had peeled the tape back carefully, the way she had smoothed the pages against her knee, the way she had pressed the letter to her chest without any performance in it, just the pure, private weight of something received at last. "Something private," he said, "something that mattered." "Michael, it's already being handled, Deb." A pause. What does that mean? It means Ruth Ann is going to write about it herself, on her terms, in her words, on her library blog. She asked me last night if she could, and I told her it was entirely her story to tell however she chose. He paused. I meant that. Deb was very quiet for 4 full seconds. Her library blog. She's had it for 6 years. 17 regular readers, apparently. Another silence longer. Then, this is going to be enormous. Michael, I know. Are you prepared for that? He looked out the window at the town waking up around him. The first cars moving on the street below, the lights coming on in the diner across the road. A woman walking a dog in a bright red jacket. A man rolling up the security gate on a small hardware store with the unhurried rhythm of someone who has done it 10,000 times and will do it 10,000 more. He thought about a 13-year-old boy standing at a mailbox on the corner of Fenwick and Grover for 11 counted minutes, with a letter in both hands and everything he meant to say pressed inside it. He thought about the moment it left his hands and entered hers. He thought about the letting go. Yeah, he said, I'm okay with it. Ruth Ann's post went up at 8:17 that morning, here from the small desk in her library office before the building opened to the public. It appeared on a blog called A Librarian's Notes. 6 years old, soft green banner, a small illustration of an open book at the top, 17 loyal readers who came every week for her thoughts on new children's books and the occasional reflection on reading in life. She wrote, I want to tell you something that happened last night because it happened to me, and it is mine, and I would like to share it in my own words and in my own time. A man I knew when I was a girl came to my door last night. He had driven to my town to find me. In his hands, he carried a shoebox. Inside the shoebox was a letter he had written me 47 years ago, on a night when we were both 13 years old and just beginning to understand that the world was larger than the street we lived on. He had never sent it. He had carried it with him for 40 years instead, through his whole life, through everything that life became, on the top shelf of every closet he ever owned. The letter told me that I had mattered to him, that I had helped shape who he was becoming, that I had made him, without knowing I was doing it, want to be better. I have spent 40 years working in a library. I have spent 40 years watching children find themselves in books, find courage in stories, find words for the things they could not say out loud. I have believed my whole life in the power of an honest word to change something in a person, written or spoken, sent or received. I have believed in this the way I believe in most things, quietly, completely, and for a long time. I did not expect the power of an honest word to come back to me this way. To have someone carry your name through their entire life, through all of it, and come to your door at 61 years old to say, you mattered. That is not a small thing. That is one of the largest things one person can say to another. And I do not say that because of who he is. I say it because of what it means, that the things we do for each other when we are young and afraid and just beginning, those things do not disappear. They go somewhere. They live inside someone. They travel forward through time in a shoebox on the top shelf of a closet, waiting for the day they finally find their way home. You never know what you mean to someone. I want you to hear that, really hear it. You never know what you mean to someone, so tell them. Tell the people in your life what they are to you. Do not wait 47 years. Do not wait until the gap feels too wide to cross. The letter you have been keeping inside you, the one you wrote and never sent, the one you thought about and talked yourself out of, the one you were afraid would arrive too late or land wrong or not be welcome. That letter belongs to someone. Someone is waiting for it without knowing they are waiting. Send it. With love from a librarian in Wilmington, Ruth Ann, Continuum. The post was shared 11 million times in 72 hours. Not because of Michael Jordan, whose name she had not once written, because of what she said, or because of the shoebox, because of 40 years carried quietly, because of the truth that most people recognized immediately and completely, that they too had a letter inside them that they had never sent, a thing they had meant to say, a person they had meant to tell. Messages flooded in from every corner, people writing to childhood friends they had lost track of, People calling parents while there was still time. People opening old notebooks and finding half-finished letters and finally finishing them. A teacher in Ohio wrote to a student she had taught 20 years ago, who she had always believed would do something important, just to say so. A man in Portland called his estranged brother for the first time in 9 years. A woman in London printed Ruth Ann's post and taped it to her desk and looked at it every morning before she began her day. Michael Jordan made no public statement. He gave no interviews. He posted nothing. He drove out of Wilmington that afternoon with the windows of the gray sedan rolled all the way down. The October air moving through the car cold and clean, carrying with it the smell of the town he had grown up in. Cut grass and old trees and something sweet he had never been able to name. The same smell it had always been. The same smell it would always be. On the corner of Pine and Fifth, the boy was there again. Or a boy just like him, small and serious, bouncing a basketball on the sidewalk that was too big for his hands, losing it and chasing it and picking it up and trying again with the same quiet, undefeated patience that Michael had recognized in him 2 days ago and recognized now as something he had once been and still, in the ways that mattered, was. Michael slowed the car. He watched the boy for a moment through the open window. The boy did not look up. He was entirely focused on the ball and the concrete and the simple, endlessly repeatable project of keeping the two in contact. He was not performing for anyone. He was just doing the thing. Michael drove on. The shoebox was not in the car. It was on Ruth Ann's bookshelf, between a book about the ocean and a book about stars. She had placed it there herself the night before, after dinner, while Michael washed the 2 soup bowls at her kitchen sink and she dried them without being asked. She had walked to the bookshelf and stood in front of it for a moment, considering, measuring, and then she had slid the box into a space between the 2 books and pressed it gently back until it was flush with the other spines. She had stepped back and looked at it. There, she said. That was where it belonged. That was where it had always been going. The 40-year-old item in the shoebox was not a ring. It was not a trophy, a photograph, a check, or a piece of basketball history. It was 3 pages of notebook paper, written by a boy to a girl in the summer of 1978, in blue ballpoint ink, now faded to gray, in handwriting that leaned to the right and was careful in the places where the thought felt important. Signed with a name that would one day be known in every country on earth, but at the time was just the name of a tall, nervous boy from Wilmington who did not know how to say out loud what he meant. The letter said, "You changed me before I knew I was going to matter. You treated me like a person before I was anything else. I hope somebody tells you someday that you changed things for everyone around you without even knowing it." It was the most human thing Michael Jordan had ever carried, and it broke the internet not because of what it was, but because of what it proved, that the most extraordinary people in the world are made, in part, by the quiet and ordinary people who were kind to them when no one was watching. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, if enough time passes and the courage finally arrives, they find their way back to say so. And that is the story of Michael Jordan, with a shoebox and 3 pages of notebook paper that traveled 40 years to find the person they were always meant for. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell me where you are listening from right now. It does not matter if you are in New York or Nigeria, London or Los Angeles, a big city or a small town, just like Wilmington. I want to know where in the world this story found you today. And if this story moved you even a little, if it made you think of someone you have been meaning to reach out to, a letter you never sent, or a person who changed you before you knew you were going to matter, then do one simple thing. Hit the like button right now, not for the video, for Ruth Ann, for the idea that kindness given quietly to one person can travel further than any of us will ever fully know. And if you believe that the world gets a little better every time we share stories like this one, stories about real courage, real love, and real human beings doing the quiet, brave thing, then subscribe to this channel so you never miss one. Every single subscriber helps these stories reach one more person who might need to hear them today. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because the next story is already waiting for you, and I promise it is worth your time. Go ahead, click it.